Neural activity is spiking. We are bypassing the superficial layers, diving straight into the gears and the synapses of one of the most distinct voices in the industry.
Since the day they left San Diego, the NFL doesn't exist to me.
This is Callan's Cranium, a high-octane journey into the why and the how. We aren't here for the standard highlight-driven fluff you find on the mainstream networks. This is a deep-tissue deconstruction of the sporting landscape.
Baseball is supposed to be a 162-game grind. Don't you dare come on here and tell me to shorten the season. I'll take that 162 grind any day of the week that ends in the letter Y and twice over on Sunday.
No filters. No scripts. Just an unfiltered look into the inner workings of a mind that lives by one rule. Sports talk done the way it was always meant to be.
Don't just sit there and watch. Get off the bench and get in the chat box. Let's get moving.
The system is fully operational. We are live from the Empty the Bench network. There are those who said this wouldn't work. But you know exactly who you are.
Small markets are succeeding, and they're doing it the right way. So please keep on doubting.
The doctor is in. Here is Callan McClurg.
What a day, what a week. Can we get past the bedside manners and bypass pleasantries and clear trauma bay right away? My friends, we scrub in straight to the multi-billion-dollar corporate boardroom of professional sports and stand over a sports economy that delivered the ultimate diagnostic proof of systematic corporate hypocrisy, legal maneuvering, and billionaire warfare. Forced to look over at Major League Baseball, where over the weekend, baseball team owners gathered and voted unanimously to approve a sale of my hometown Padres for a $3.9 billion price tag. That's right, $3.9 billion for a single franchise and a supposed small market footprint. But while ownership groups spend every press conference crying poverty, whining and bitching and moaning about luxury tax thresholds and claiming that they can't afford to keep homegrown stars or fund competitive payrolls, behind closed doors, these franchise values are skyrocketing by billions of dollars and reaping record-breaking central revenue checks and turning franchise ownership into a impenetrable private wealth-generating fortress. And now here we sit 4 months away, roughly, from December the 1st, when the CBA runs out. The owners are preparing to lock out the ball players and demand a hard salary cap. How do you claim the sports economic model is broken when a franchise just changed hands for nearly $4 billion? This isn't financial distress, but pure corporate greed posturing for an impending labor war that might cost us a full baseball season. Then pull out the scalpel for the NBA, where corporate theater and billionaire power struggles are at an absolute fever pitch. First over in Inglewood, after nearly 11 months of a witch hunt into Steve Ballmer and the LA Clippers over Kawhi Leonard's contract, the NBA officially came up empty on salary cap fraud, pivoting instead to a vague failure to supervise charge just to save face. And down the street, though, on South Figueroa Boulevard, the LA Lakers are sitting on a staggering $12.5 billion valuation. But now the franchise is being paralyzed by a full-blown Buss family civil war. Jeanie Buss is again back in court slapping down legal injunctions against Josh Kushner and Bob Iger and her own family to block her own siblings from selling off their 17.8% minority ownership stake. So other folks, it's baseball owners crying small market tears over $3.9 billion sales, the league office inventing administrative charges against Steve Ballmer, or the Buss family fighting over billions in court again. The lesson is clear. The institutions running these sports are completely infected by greed, ego, backstabbing, and internal politics. The winning room is officially locked, and welcome in for episode 14, which is on the operating table. With that said, folks, hello again, my friends, and welcome inside of Callan's Cranium for a beautiful Tuesday night, August 18th, 2026. As always, wherever and however you are joining us from here across the live stream on YouTube and on Twitter, and of course, more importantly, in your podcast or on your podcast app, wherever you're joining us from here today, on the drive or at the office and whatnot here today. As always, folks, we invite you to please join us, though, as usual, inside Cranium Command, but also follow us on social media over on Twitter, IG, and TikTok over at Cranium ETB. You can follow me on social media over at Calamac Sports or at Calamac3 on Twitter. You can also follow the network on social media on Twitter, IG, and TikTok, all at ETB Network. And more importantly, please go like and subscribe over at youtube.com/ETB Network. And also, more importantly, if you cannot watch the show live or you missed the replay, catch the audio in your podcast app the next day, wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, iHeartMedia, Acast, you name it. Folks, before we get the show on the off the ground and running tonight, or here today, a couple of housekeeping notes for you real quick again. Due to work issues next Tuesday, we are moving our show, folks, up one day from Tuesday to next Monday, August 24th. That'll be at our usual start time, though we had to move it up one day to Monday because I have to go to a work event and a postseason debrief meeting for a league I work for here in San Diego on Tuesday night. So I'll be away on Tuesday. So we're going to move the show up one day to next Monday, August 24th. Also, folks, more importantly, I've been waiting to kind of talk about this for the last couple of days, but it finally became official over the course of the weekend. And that, of course, my friends, is that the End of the Bench Network is pleased to announce that the network has officially surpassed 3,000 watch hours on YouTube. And we cannot, folks, thank you, the viewers, enough for your outstanding support in making this milestone possible. And thanks to viewers like you, and even for those listeners like you out there, trust me, in the coming days and next week, roughly, we will be rolling out all the details about super chats, super stickers, super thanks, membership perks and tiers, the merch store, and so much more. So we thank you again for your support of network programming. I want to, folks, start off right there real quick before we get to all the topics here tonight. We'll talk all things Bill Rasmussen's unfortunate passing today for ESPN, all things about the Kawhi Leonard investigation and whatnot. But let me first start, though, here with the opening salvo, in a way, about the 3,000 watch hour goal. And, you know, I made the mention, folks, last Tuesday. I know I got a little bit off the leash on Tuesday about my kind of like this very long podcast journey that I've kind of been on for the last, 6 to 10 years, roughly, if not longer. Again, I got my start doing a WNBA basketball podcast before it was cool, like I said last Tuesday, roughly about 12 years ago, and kind of had dabbled into it a little bit, though, had done a bit, some off-the-wall shows, though, that were done via Google Hangouts way back in the day, and mainly did it, like I said, though, last Tuesday. This is nothing more for me, though, to be a labor of love for sports fans out there who maybe are getting tired of ESPN or Fox Sports or what have you, to support people like ETB, or when I was a part of other platforms out there during COVID. I had nothing to do, of course, and I linked up with, a bunch of people like Isaiah Leung, for example, and we had a tremendous run for that time of when we were all just sitting at home doing absolutely nothing productive with our lives, though, and getting guests on, doing shows almost every day, just to, again, like, for one, distract yourself about COVID, but again, a labor of love. And that was, again, part of why I came to ETB, having heard about them through the grapevine from, through Playback TV, about what Playback was trying to build at that time, though. And coming here, though, reviving Press Row to what it is right now has been great. Working with everybody here has been awesome. And again, working towards that collective goal, though, of trying to do something like 3,000 hours on YouTube, for example. And to finally get there's one thing. But again, we're not done yet, though, as we got to get to 4,000 now. And this is only just, again, as I said on Sunday, this is a pure stepping stone. But again, a major thank you again to everyone who, again, is tuned in to watch every show that we do here on ETB. Thank you again to everyone that I've worked with in the past. Again, I mean that wholeheartedly, again, because I always say you're only as good as the people that you work with and that you're surrounded by. And that goes for everybody I've worked with in the past, the other two platforms I was at. I thank you all so much for the chance to work with you, get to know you very well, stay in touch, though. And obviously, I know that I usually say, though, that when a new chance comes, though, in this field that I'm in and have been in for almost 20 years, coming up in a couple of years, you take that next step forward. So again, I really appreciate those that I've worked with in the past for what they've done, what they still continue to do, though, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, though. And I really cannot say thank you enough to them, but also, again, thank everybody here on ETB for the chance to come here. Have a bit more creative direction, I'd say, though, over the platform and where things are at right now with where we have currently gone. And being one of the only few members of this platform on the West Coast, also, I think adds a nice little wrinkle. So I thank everybody once more again and for everyone's support, and not just for the podcast platform, but of course for my own journey again through across my sports announcing career. Though I actually, real quick, a funny story. Last hockey season, again, I went on my 10th year in the American Hockey League, and when Nick Morgeson, who's backstage producing tonight as always, helping out as the assistant surgeon tonight. I remember telling Nick, I've long not wanted to get a TikTok account because I just didn't feel like I needed to have it, though. And I made the mention, though, too, a couple times on in the dungeon that I didn't feel the need to do the extra work of the clips and whatnot and get your thoughts out there. And, when Nick said, dude, your soccer content broke the account, it was 60,000 views or whatever. And I had a funny text, and I had a text message come out from my boss with the Gulls, my game day operations manager. And I was horrified about it because he does follow my TikTok. He says, but I wanted to tell you, by the way, man, I love watching your TikTok content because this is the side that no one sees of you because they only know you for what you do in the PA business. No one knows that you have these thoughts about the sports world. And I love what you have to say, though. I mean, sometimes I might laugh at what you say, though. I might not agree, though, but I love just seeing a different side of you come out, though. And that, in a way, made me feel good because I'm very much, in a way, very hesitant to say a lot that I usually do because I, in a way, have worried about could this spill over to this being, where I'm told to take a hike from organizations I work for, maybe. But to hear that, though, from that, and I may have mentioned this with Nick Morgeson last Tuesday or last Wednesday or recently, about how friends of mine who don't watch the content, but they will watch the social media clips of me on Press Row or on TikTok. They're like, dude, this is so great that we get to see a different side of you come out, though, and that we enjoy when you get pissed off about stuff, about why the Padres can't hit, for example, or, the WNBA being a bunch of, malarkey right now. This is the side of you that we see, but you don't want to make it go public. And that's just how I've just been hesitant. In a way, I'd say a little camera shy a little bit about doing this sort of thing, though. But in short, though, again, major thanks again to those of you that, again, have really helped this journey of 3,000 watch hours. And we are going forward towards 4,000 right now. So, again, we really, again, salute, namaste, thank you, gracias for what everyone has done over the last several years here on ETB. Folks, we're going to start things off, though, on a somber note. On this Tuesday and for episode 14 in the emitting ward. Very sad news for sports fans around the world. Broke, of course, early on Tuesday. That, of course, folks, is the passing of one of the men who launched ESPN, the man himself, Bill Rasmussen, who passed away at the age of 93 years old early on Tuesday due to complications from a very courageous battle with Parkinson's disease. Of course, ESPN launched as the world's first 24-hour sports network on September 7th of 1979. This, though, folks, was very much a shot in the dark. Bill Rasmussen had a $9,000 credit card advance maxed out by Bill after he was fired from the WHA's New England Whalers. He then got a satellite deal with RCA Satcom 1 and gained a 24-hour satellite space before most cable operators believed round-the-clock sports was visible. And, of course, he said in a very famous quote, if you're a fan, what you'll see in the next minutes, hours, and days to follow may convince you you've gone to sports heaven, which, of course, was the launch of ESPN. Where would the sports world be, folks? Where would we be as sports fans? Where would we be as sports podcast content creators without ESPN and Bill Rasmussen's vision? I think back a lot, folks, to when Ted Turner passed away earlier this year. And I say that for the fact of I watched a documentary from Channel 4 News in London. They were, in a way, talking about some of the biggest global news stories that broke over the last 50 plus years. You know, JFK and Lockerbie in Scotland with Pan Am, 9/11, for example. And they talked about Ted Turner's vision to create CNN. And I forget the reporter's name that was interviewed, and I think they said that Ted was told, Ted, I don't think there's enough bandwidth or time to do a 24-hour rolling news network. And Ted basically said, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. And again, CNN, though, came around the time of the Gulf War in the 80s, or in the 80s, roughly, if memory serves me correct, or even the late 80s, early 90s. And I think a lot of people that are of that generation, you know, think about the Gulf War because we saw it play out live on CNN. And again, think about Bill Rasmussen. You lose your job in the World Hockey Association with the New England/Hartford Whalers, who became the Carolina Hurricanes eventually. And you've got $9,000 of a credit card advance sitting around. And you think to yourself, the way that sports is going here in the late 70s, early 80s, there should be a 24-hour sports network out there for people to watch games and watch highlights. We should do it. And I found it interesting, though, that initially Bill said it was only going to be a Connecticut-based station before it went national. When they got that deal for RCA Satcom 1. And I know that people will be very quick, and I understand it. People will say, well, Bill, your network now is a shell of itself. And that part I can understand wholeheartedly. Due to the nature right now about the NFL taking an equity stake in ESPN, the oversaturation from my perspective, just my thoughts, I'm sorry it might offend you, the oversaturation of NFL content now on the daily. I know that the season's coming up, though, but it was way worse over the offseason. How they have, in a way, left baseball high and dry. They brought the NHL back to ESPN. But all the shock jock, hot take, artist, clickbait programming, the loss of Around the Horn, moving the sports reporters off of TV to ESPN Plus. There's a lot of, there are some negatives. But it really was the first thing out of the box, though, for us sports fans to watch these games and to watch highlights 24/7. And just this past weekend, folks, Chris Berman got honored at D23 at Honda Center in Anaheim for his 50 years at ESPN. Think about that. Chris Berman's been there almost 50 years and is now a Disney company legend. And I also would say, look at all the careers that ESPN had go through their pipeline. Stephen A., Skip Bayless, John Saunders, Bob Lee, Jeremy Schaap, Charlie Steiner, Hannah Storm for a while, Linda Cohn, John Buccigross, David Lloyd, Carl Ravage, people just laid off within the last couple of weeks. I'll do anything with current Prices Right announcer George Gray. Like a sports version of Fear Factor is what that show was for a bit. The Red Bull New Year No Limits event that was held there in San Diego for 2 winners involving Robbie Madison and Levi LaValle jumping over the Embarcadero here in town, over the water on snowmobiles and bikes. And it's all because Bill Rasmussen had some money laying around, though, after he maxed out his credit card, after he got fired, and took the swing at launching a 24-hour sports network. Frankly, again, tell me, if you're an ESPN fan, where would we be as sports fans right now without ESPN being at our disposal? I think sports looks way different in 2026 if that gamble is not taken by Bill and his son Scott back in 1979. And I may have folks mentioned that I lost one of my grandfathers to Parkinson's disease a few years ago, and I miss him daily. Fidel and I were close. We went to sporting events all the time. Him and I became massive hockey fans after I got involved with the sport 20 plus years ago, back in 2000, 2001. We baseball games. We did a Charger game together, though he was a Raider fan. Padre games, though he was a Dodger fan. Worked for the local police department for like 25 years. He helped start the schoolboy program and the school safety patrol here in the South Bay. And I saw what Parkinson's did to him, and it was awful. The shaking of the hands and what have you. And he sadly suffered a stroke and lost his life around the time that COVID was finally coming to an end. And I could not go over to visit him because I just would break down, because he was like my second father, basically, in a way. And Parkinson's is much like cancer. It sucks. It's affected everybody in some capacity. And man, Bill Rasmussen and Ted Turner have got to be up there right now, probably sharing a cold and saying, man, without you, this probably is impossible. And I really think so, folks. I think without one of these, without one visionary, there's not another one that happens. And I feel that way, folks, after I went to, ironically enough, I was at Disneyland on Monday. That same place I said can recoup those, those losses with churros sales. I had 2 of them yesterday on Monday for a friend's birthday. And I was just at the park on Monday, and I got to see Bob Iger's new window that is up on Main Street. And they really honor those that have a massive impact on the Walt Disney Company with a special window that's like tongue-in-cheek about, Frank Wells, for example, has his named after a mountain excavation company because he was a massive ski nut. Madam Leota Toombs and Kim Irvine have their window above the Crystal Arts store on Main Street because Leota Toombs plays Madame Leota in the Haunted Mansion, for example. Bob Iger has his above the Main Street Emporium, for example. Bob Gurr has one for transportation. Like, there are people that are visionaries about this sort of stuff. And I always think about Walt's quote, not to go on a theme park tangent real quick, but I always love the quote of, it's kind of fun to do the impossible, like making a theme park 71 years ago. Or in this case, do the impossible, 24-hour rolling cable news, 24-hour rolling sports news with live games mixed in and shows on the daily. So we owe a massive debt, folks, as TV consumers, to one Ted Turner, and a massive one, if you're a sports fan. A massive debt is also owned to Bill Rasmussen. Bill, thank you for the vision to bring people sports 24/7, 365. And especially with Parkinson's, folks, like I said, I already saw it affect my family once. I don't need to see it happen again to anybody out there, even my own worst enemies. I don't wish cancer, and I don't wish anything like that amongst anybody that, has to fight through that sort of stuff and what have you. With that said, though, folks, when the final whistle does blow and the last West Coast game wraps up, the college football Saturday isn't over. It's time to head to the post-game breakdown. Get ready for FP5 After Hours with Nick DiMartino, coming to you every weekend this college football season when the wild upsets, late night covers, and the Saturday Madness wrap up. Nick D will take the desk to break down everything that went down across the country, from the biggest statement wins to the bad beats that broke your heart. Nick has you covered with the fast-paced analysis, reactions, and instant fallout from sunrise until the late night hours. Do not go to sleep without getting the final word on Saturday's action in college football. Catch FP5 After Hours with Nick DiMartino premiering September 5th and every Saturday going forward during the college football season, only on ETB. Lock in late, stay locked in, and recap the chaos. Make sure you subscribe today to our YouTube channel today over at youtube.com/ETB Network. So college football only a few more weeks away. Alrighty, folks, intensive coverage leads us to Hollywood for the first of two basketball stories. One, I told Nick Morganson I'm not really shocked at, that of course took place, involving the LA Clippers and the very much interesting news that did come out over the course of the day over on Monday. But my goodness gracious, folks, after 11 months of this nonsense, reports on Monday confirm that the NBA has found no evidence that Clippers owner Steve Ballmer funneled private or corporate money through team sponsors, including a wireless company, Daktronics, and also through aspiration to pay star player Kawhi Leonard to circumvent the salary cap, from what we do in fact know at this point in time. Okay, all I have to say is this to start off shop here. Assistant Surgeon Morganson, I hate to tell you, man, but I told you. Again, you know what? How am I, again, not surprised? And I know I made the running joke on the last PR bonus hour we had involving the Daktronics episode. I hate to say it, but I was right. That the NBA was going to probably say we found no evidence of this happening. Again, this might be my new favorite NBA team, but this is still not shocking. and I do think that this still, though, reeks of bad aroma. So you mean to tell me, NBA front office, that for about as long as Mark Walter had the Lakers ownership, over the last 11 months plus, and with all the reporting by Pablo Torre and all the media pundits out there that, in a way we're basically saying, that guilty, you still come back with nothing? You left us waiting for a bubble. 2 hours or 11 months is long enough. I very much, folks, am like stunned, but I'm also like not. And I will say it, there's got to be more to this story. And I applaud that Pablo Torre has not once backtracked, and neither has ESPN, about the article that was written. And whatever Pablo has also uncovered over the last several months. I want to read part of the story, and I know that Nick and Zan read part of this on Tuesday, but via the reports of Don Vanatta Jr., Baxter Holmes, and also Ramona Shelburne. On Monday, the NBA ruled that they had found no evidence showing that the LA Clippers, owned by Steve Ballmer, had funneled any money through team sponsors to pay Kawhi in order to circumvent the salary cap per three people with knowledge of the discussions between the two sides in the recent couple of days. However, the NBA now is only solely focused on whether the team's introduction of Leonard to team sponsors constitutes a violation of the league's rules prohibiting salary cap circumvention, two of the sources said. The league is also examining whether the Clippers are guilty of failure to supervise employees, though it's unclear what specific rule that team would have violated or what the penalties would be per two of those sources. The 11-month investigation into salary cap circumvention expanded beyond Leonard's deal with Aspiration, the now defunct green banking company at the center of the allegations, to at least three other companies involving Daktronics and also Biongo Wireless Company that also had deals with the Clippers. Two of those sources also confirm to ESPN. However, sources said that the league has presented no evidence that Ballmer actually funneled money towards Kawhi Leonard in any way, shape, form, or size. Of course, NBA spokesman and Nick Morgansen's best friend, Mike Bass, did not respond to multiple requests for comment last week on Monday, including an email on Friday that detailed ESPN's findings. In a statement, though, posted to X on Monday, Bass said that ESPN's reporting about the investigation, which the NBA declined to cooperate, contains numerous and significant inaccuracies. The results of this matter will be made clear once the investigation is concluded. But a spokesperson for the LA Clippers declined to also comment questions about the nature or content of the NBA's findings or ongoing discussions, but did say, though, that the team did introduce players, including Kawhi, to companies with which the team had relationships with. Making introductions between players and team partners is both the ordinary practice by the NBA teams and a common request of players and also team representatives. Statement also did say that the team did not negotiate or dictate the terms of Kawhi's endorsement deals. The fact that a player has an endorsement partnership with a company that also does business with his team is not evidence of salary cap circumvention, per the Clippers' statement. Even then, folks, Kawhi would not be getting punished, as I have long tried to say. Again, if we want to go back to Joe Smith, we can. That was not him getting punished. That was the franchise getting crippled and handcuffed and shackled. Forfeiture of picks, a massive fine, suspensions for Glenn Taylor and Kevin McHale, where I said on press row last Wednesday, if you want to send a message, yeah, that fine may not be enough, though, but you bar everybody. Ballmer, the GM, team president, they all get banned for a full year. No contact, no working from home, none of that garbage. They're done for a full year. And to Nick Morgansen's other point, too, Kawhi, you can't play till this thing is fully figured out and there's a verdict given. And if you do, in fact, play a game while this is still pending, then that's shameful on the NBA. And if Adam Silver is, and if the NBA is saying this to protect Steve Ballmer, then Adam Silver should be removed from office. How about that? To protect the best interests of the NBA and to protect the rich zone of the game, then if you're doing that, then you got to get out of office then. Hire a new commissioner. I mean, can anything go right in basketball right now? Or are we just, hoping and praying, or are we, just throwing, are we just, throwing pennies into a wishing well and hoping for the best? I mean, the fact that at least 2 to 3, and I did make the mention on Tuesday on ETV Sports with Nick and Zam. It finally came out about that third company, which is called Biongo Wireless, which to Nick's point from the show on Tuesday earlier in the afternoon, they are like the official telephone company for the Intuit Dome. So in a way, it's like funneling the money in a way via the arena to Kawhi Leonard. Aspiration, who had that massive investment in the, in like ads on, at the arena. Daktronics, who built the damn scoreboard for them. And now the wireless company. I mean, how does that come up as no evidence? Do we have to call Abby from NCIS to do a full-fledged forensic review of the body on the table we have in front of us here with the Clippers? And I'll say, this to me feels like collusion. Big word, I know, but it feels like collusion. That you can have so much evidence, like right in front of you. And I don't get it. I really don't. But folks, we'll keep it at that. But I am legitimately stunned. I am legitimately stunned about this whole thing. I mean, the evidence just feels so overbearingly obvious. But again, Commissioner Silver, you kept us waiting for a bubble for the last 11 months. And again, Nick Morganson, I hate to, sound like, a bit of an a-hole, but where did I stutter last week or the last time we did a Kawhi bonus hour when I said, imagine if the NBA comes up and says, "Oh, we found nothing." Ah, that's right, Nick. It's win-loss behavior. We got to protect the richest man of the game. Hate to say it, but yikes. I mean, believe me, I like being right about things, but not in this sense, when it also affects a team that I root for in some capacity. Which further in a way goes back to the whole thing about the Clippers curse. I mean, again, I know there are different circumstances, folks. It took Adam Silver, folks, 4 days, 1 day longer to make potato salad, to throw out Donald Sterling about the whole thing with the recorded tapes of him insulting, Elgin Baylor and Magic Johnson and the racial remarks he made. 4 days compared to 11 months. One where Adam Silver had brains and actually had backbone to step up to the plate and actually do something with this franchise. But hey, it's collusion, if you ask me. And again, Nick, I hate being right sometimes, but that's one I wish I was not right about, well, they're not going to find anything, so why should we keep talking about this? And bada bing, bada boom.
Are you kidding me? That's right. Who do you think you are? I am.
Mr. Weber, you might want to be careful about saying that number 5 around these parts nowadays. I hate to break it to you. We'll see what happens. Folks, we're going to go just a little bit beyond here for our 30-minute checkup here tonight, as we again mentioned that we did, in fact, break down what we have done so far regarding what we know about the sad news of the passing of Bill Rasmussen, who again helped launch ESPN back in 1979. Of course, Bill, very great story again of getting fired from his old job in the WHA, using a $9,000 advance to start up ESPN. He thought it was going to be just a station in Connecticut, and it grew and grew and grew to where it is today. And again, Bill lost his life early on Tuesday from Parkinson's disease. And we just, again, talked all things involving what we know about the Kawhi Leonard situation, involving no credible evidence about the salary cap circumvention involving Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. And I am calling it collusion. There we go. With that, folks, into the switch as we move away here now and move over into more with the NBA. From one side of LA to the other side of LA, the never-ending circus that is the Buss family civil war is back in the limelight after a startling announcement also made on Monday of Mark Walter selling off the $12.5 billion, selling off the Lakers for now $12.5 billion to both Josh Kushner and Bob Iger, who again are trying to trigger a tag along provision, I should say. My apologies. About what's gone on, and that, of course, folks, has now led to every Buss family sibling but Jeanie Buss to now want to sell the Lakers. Can this family stop acting like the immature children they are at the Thanksgiving dinner table for once and act like grown adults? Folks, if you watched ETV Sports on Tuesday with Nick Morganson and Zan Bando, I mentioned about how this family has had this ironclad fist stranglehold of the LA sports market, even with the Dodgers being so successful these last 2 years, though. But for a long time, it's kind of been the Lakers usually calling the shots in LA sports. And I will say, folks, Dr. Buss really, as I said, I want to say fairly recently, I might be wrong though, but I remember saying though, and it was actually last Wednesday on PR, that without Dr. Buss's influence on making basketball games what they are today, you're looking at a very stale product still, like no cheerleaders, no in-game entertainment for an organ player or a live band chanting defense or courtside seats, for example. All that was Dr. Buss's vision. And then you look at what this family owned. And I was talking to Nick after or before the show tonight, in the waiting room. Dr. Buss treated Jeanie like his golden goose. Folks, she was 19 years old, just enrolled at USC when she became the GM of the LA Strings of World Team Tennis. I know, you all see the Lakers, and I get that, and the form. You also had them owning the Kings until 88 when they gave the club to Bruce McNow. Casey knows all about that time in Kings history. They had the form. They had the LA Strings of World Team Tennis. They happened to win back 2 titles in their tenure. They had the LA Lasers of the Major Indoor Soccer League. Jeanie helped start WOW, Women of Wrestling. They had the LA Blades of Roller Hockey International, which I documented on Small Market Edition a few weeks ago. They were like the first real family of sports, if you ask me, alongside, for us West Coasters. I'm not trying to, crap upon the Steinbrenners. But the Buss family out here for us in SoCal and on the West Coast, they were our true, first family of sports. They launched the RSNs back in 1985. But this whole thing, though, folks, has just become a massive, massive firestorm. And frankly, folks, it has become an utter embarrassment for the Los Angeles Lakers to be having all this infighting. I mean, for the simple notion, folks, that cheap plug again. You can go back if you have subscribed to Small Market Edition on your podcast app. Go back to episode 13 called The Unwritten Will. I broke down some of the most notorious franchises who've been owned by families. The Bolins, the Buss family, the McCourts, the Seidlers, for example. The Laker front office and the ownership, they literally, folks, have to use the LA County court system to talk to their siblings. And new reporting coming out, though, as well, about the notion that Nick told me, talks of Jeanie telling her siblings, I wish you weren't even born. I mean, that's reserved for people like me who are the black sheep of their families. From in-laws. And your own older brother who's 9 years older than you. Not when you're running a pro sports franchise. It's been 13 years, folks, since Dr. Buss passed away. The Lakers have become a shell of themselves for the last 13 years. I get it about 2020 with LeBron winning the title down there, the loss of Kobe, God bless his soul for what he did for the game and for women's basketball and whatnot. But outside of 2020, what have you done for me lately? That's how I view the Lakers right now, is other than 2020, what have you done for me lately if I'm a Laker fan? Okay, you got gifted Luka Doncic for a fragile Anthony Davis. Other than that, you got a ring. Okay, I get it in 2020. Away from that, the Lakers having 17-win seasons, being in the lottery. That's not the Lakers I knew when I was growing up here, watching Kobe and Shaq dominate back-to-back-to-back world championships back in the early 2000s. The '08, the 09 and 2010 dynasty that won those last two titles before 2020. Kobe's 81-point game. And a lot of times, though, folks, power goes to your head. We're all, I think, driven by different things. We're all motivated by money, fame, TikTok views, whatever it might be that we cling to. I mean, for me, it's about my craft, my industry, making my family proud, making my friends proud, making myself proud, and try not to stoke my ego whenever that might happen. And that I think we're all motivated by something out there. My case, overcoming a learning disability back in 4th grade and not having a driver's license and making a career out of, being a hockey announcer and things like that. I think we're all motivated by something out there. I think too many times, though, folks, in sports, though, like in, power struggles like this, it's awful. I remember, just some of the families I talked about, in that small market episode about, what happens when the lead owner of a family business dies, like the Bolins, the McCourts, the Bensons, the McNairs, Seidlers, the Busses, the McCaskey Hallis family. And I lived through that a little bit with the death of Peter Seidler here in San Diego for the last 3 years. I remember it too with the Chargers. I'm not going to, crap upon the NFL right here and right. I'm just making a point, about when Alex Spanos passed away before they left for LA, that I don't think the Chargers would have left if Alex was still alive, sadly. And again, the kids are running the show, and you're seeing it more than I am about how the Chargers are doing in LA. I mean, yeah, they might have a great quarterback, but no one really cares about the Chargers up in Los Angeles. And the fact that that'll be 10 years come January of next year that they've been out of this marketplace here in San Diego is just baffling. And I wrote in sarcastically to Nick and Zan when they were doing their AFC West preview. I hope they go 0-18 and finish in last place. It's just how I feel about that team. But again, because of family issues. You put the wrong people in charge, this sort of stuff happens. And for Jeanie to use a 2017 court ruling mandating no sale or transfer of team shares can occur without approval from all co-trustees, including her siblings, then she has no standing ground. In a way, folks, for 13 years, minus 2020, we have watched the moral decay of a once proud franchise. And I think teams that are owned by family usually go down this rabbit hole for a long time. I mean, yeah, they've won 11 titles underneath their ownership watch. They got Staples Center built in 99. I get that. But what is the more recent legacy going to be about the Buss family being run by the kids for the last 13 years? a Title I underneath very much horrible circumstances in 2020, the loss of a franchise icon that everybody around the world loved and admired in Kobe Bryant, and a gift trade from an incompetent franchise of Luka Doncic for a brittle Anthony Davis. Other than that, not a whole lot I'd be very happy about if I'm a Laker fan away from 2020. Just how I feel about it. We'll see what comes out of it. I don't know what else it'll be. All right, folks, over now to general surgery as we move along here to the NFL. And not much of a surprise here, though, folks, as we move on at the rate that we are going here. But once again, folks, Roger Goodell reaffirms the stance that there will, in fact, be expansion teams heading outside of the U.S. borders and probably overseas, as of Goodell's remarks made with an interview done with German outlet RTL NTV done by Marcus Kuhn, with Goodell declaring it is inevitable that the NFL will permanently locate a NFL franchise somewhere outside of the U.S. Regular season games right now for the season are in London, Munich, Frankfurt, and Sao Paulo and Madrid, with where things have gone for the National Football League. All I have to ask is... What? I know it might be inevitable, folks, that the Jags will go to London one day. But I think this is, even for the NFL, folks, I'll try to be serious here about the NFL for like 10 minutes, all right? Cut me some slack. And I don't want to compare apples to oranges here. But you might recall, though, on Inside the Cranium a few weeks ago, if not about a month or so ago, we talked about Brady Tkachuk, the captain of the Ottawa Senators in the NHL, who went via trade to play with his brother Matthew in Florida. You might recall I mentioned the tax breakdown between a player's salary in Canada playing in a league like the NHL, which is both cross-border. Same can be said for Major League Soccer, for example, who has teams across the border, and even with Major League Baseball and the NBA. I remember I mentioned the provincial, so the state, so the province of Ottawa, Ontario. The provincial taxes was 53% up in Eastern Canada. I even think the almighty NFL is overstepping the boundary line here about trying to put a team somewhere overseas. As much as Nick Morgeson loves, in a way, you know, to say, well, Cal, why is MLS doing this whole thing with the calendar changing? And, you know, they're going to be up against the NFL in August and September. Well, Nick, let me turn the tables on you. You put an NFL team in London or somewhere in England during the course of the NFL season. Where do you think the English sports fan is going to be going to? A football match involving, I don't know, Chelsea playing Man U, or the hapless Jacksonville Jaguars of London playing the New York Jets of New York, or the New Jersey Jets of New York? I'm probably leaning towards Chelsea playing Man U over dysfunctional team in Jacksonville and poorly run New York football team who plays in Jersey, owned by Crystal Palace owner Woody Johnson. Do we need to remember NFL Europa? How did that work? Oh, that's right. The league folded operation. Yeah, but they were playing against NFL teams over in America. That might be part of it, folks. But please go and ask any Brits, any English residents, Where would their hooliganism, be with? Chelsea, Coventry, Tottenham, over, say, the Jets, the Jags, or the Bucks. They're probably going to pick the proper version of football over the watered down, slow motion version of our version of football. Sadly. I get it, though. I absolutely get it that American football needs to grow more in overseas marketplaces, like over in England and Europe and wherever. And I say the same damn thing about baseball. Stop going to Japan and Korea. They already play the game over there. Go to India. Go and take Saudi Arabian money and go play over in the UAE. Go back to England. Go to South Africa. Go back to Australia. Stop with the safe bets and make it grow in other places. I mean, taxes might be one thing, but I also think back, Nick, and I believe it was the Packers playing somebody in Sao Paulo. Folks, there were concerns down there about both teams wearing green because it's like a color of one of the most notorious gangs down in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Does any NFL fan really think it's a smart idea to pull off these international stunts? To try for one day out of the year to try to uproot the global game of football? At Wembley or at Hotspur Stadium or at Emirates Stadium? Or in Paris or in Dublin? I don't think so. Yeah, it's not me trying to, say, hey, I hate the NFL. I'm just trying to prove a fact here. And all that point is that I think that the European fan base, they might tolerate one game, but I don't think they're going to tolerate more than one game. And again, I know that you could say, well, it's this, and again, I can use that, that stupid crutch that we had during the World Cup. Well, it's never going to be the NFL. Again, I fully, wholeheartedly understand that it's not going to be the NFL in this country. But I think with the NFL infringing upon the other version of football's calendar, as much as it's, a major, talking point on this network about, well, why is MLS going to do this, and sabotage their season, by competing against the NFL come next season with this, sprint season and this whole thing, involving, a 34-game season, but now it's going to run July till May. Like, how is that even possible? Well, again, they're trying to align with what Europe says about how you can go and get better players to come and play in this league out here in America. To make soccer better and better and better. Which has its own broken pay-to-play system, as we already know right now. And I can only imagine, folks. You know what just came to my head too? I'm gonna actually give you some logic about the NFL. So record this. Why do I feel the NFL goes overseas and puts a team in, let's just go London and Paris? Oh, you know what that means, folks? They finally get their 18-game regular season. And their 2 bye weeks. That's all I can think of. More importantly, how the hell do you make a damn division work over there if they're going to have to make those flights across the ocean to come play out here in the States? Or better yet, are we going to change the name of the Super Bowl to the World Bowl? European champs versus the NFL champ? Is that how it's going to work here? Give me a break, folks. I know. You're not qualified. We get it. Like, no. Can we just admit that this is a stupid idea for the NFL? To try to make a division or an actual team or two work overseas? If you really want the overseas or the international market so damn badly, put a team in Canada. Or better yet, merge with the damn CFL and call it a day. Grab those 9 teams. You got a 41-team league. You're welcome. Make them play the American version of football and not the Canadian version of football. Why not? They get the CFL teams were in America at one point. Go ask the Baltimore Stallions who won the Grey Cup back in the day. I mean, if you want international teams so badly, go poach them to CFL like this is college athletics. Go and poach the Argonauts or the BC Lions or the Saskatchewan Roughriders or the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Go do that. Or better yet, NFL, stop being a damn hungry hippo for more money. How about you do that for a change? I fully get it. Our network revolves around the NFL, sadly. ESPN does now, too, because you have a 10% minority stake in the platform. Adding teams overseas does not get me back into watching your feeble product. I hate to say it, but it won't get me back to watching the No Fun League. When you choose to leave St. Louis and San Diego high and dry because ownership and you don't want to go to the table to help them out with money to build a new stadium, then you lost me. Nor really do I find it appealing to watch one play, sit around for 40 seconds, and then watch another play. Yeah, but these guys don't flop like soccer. You blow the whistle, you kick the ball back into play, and you resume play. It's not that hard. Oh, well. I don't see any sort of... I really do not see a clear path forward about how this whole thing is going to play out. I really don't. To me, it's not worth the headache or being insane in the membrane to go and put teams over in London, Madrid, Barcelona. I guarantee you, every soccer team over in London, FC Barcelona and Real Madrid would do laps around that NFL team back there when it comes to revenue. Now, how can you clown American football when you're American? You're so un-American. Oh, okay. I'm just looking at it, though, from a different perspective. You put an NFL team over in England or in Europe, I guarantee you that they are not going to be getting what you all think it's going to be. You'll have Nathan Peterman being a starting quarterback for the Scottish Claymores again, or the Frankfurt Galaxy, or the Barcelona Dragons. More importantly, do you really think, though, that Wembley Stadium or Emirates Stadium wants to have the headache of having the American football field and then the actual soccer field on the same, on that service? I highly doubt it. There's a reason that MLS does not approve of SDFC and the Sounders and the Fire playing at Soldier Field and Snapdragon Stadium and also at Lumen Field. They don't want the pitch to be infiltrated upon by American football lines for the Seahawks, SDSU football, and the Bears. Believe it or not, a major social media firestorm broke out when people watched the Chicago Fire play at home. after the Bears had a home game for the preseason. Every soccer fan was pissed off about seeing that damn wishbone C at midfield for a soccer match. Oh, why is that such a damn big deal? Don't shoot the messenger. Major League Soccer and the NWSL don't want other lines for American football on their fields. It's called pointing out facts. And every Chicago Fire fan that I know lost their mind watching that game, as did the entire MLS fan base on Sunday or over the course of the week. And I think it even happened, too, during an in-season tournament, which is a massive, massive embarrassment to those of us that actually care about soccer and those around the world who watch soccer, who point and laugh. You got that NFL team logo or that American football team logo midfield. What a joke you are. Yeah, I saw a lot of that commentary, folks. I really did. So don't be trying to say that Arsenal or Tottenham or FC Barcelona would approve of having an American football team in their stadium. There'd be a riot if that happened at Wembley or Emirates or Camp Nou. All right, folks, we'll move away here to the rotating segment here of vital signs involving a couple of baseball stories, and one that is very much, folks, a massive disturbance, though, involving Diamondback second baseman Ketel Marte, who was put on the restricted list on Monday after going AWOL and not showing up for the game in Boston on Monday. This also marks 2 straight seasons, though, that Ketel has missed the team or has left the team under very much unexcused reasons or circumstances. The D-backs also got clobbered on Monday night 11-1 against the Red Sox as well. Torey Lovullo further saying that there has been very little response during direct phone communications with him as of Monday and Tuesday. While the D-backs, though, tried to spin the narrative, though, on Tuesday and said that he was flown back to Phoenix for an MRI on a knee that has been bothering him since the past weekend series that the D-backs played before going to Boston. Folks, these stories are very, I think, tough to gauge. The first reason being restricted list, and you think of like the worst possible thing. I tried to piece this together when I was at the park for Disney on Monday night. Yeah, I was very much like perplexed about what actually had happened. Because I think that the cycle crew here on ETB, they were as much confused as all of us were that there was reports of Marte getting DFA'd, and everyone was like, wait. The D-backs just DFA'd Ketel Marte. It turned out it was actually the Royals who DFA'd Starling Marte on Monday. And then the whole fray, of course, broke out with Ketel over the course of going AWOL on Monday. By the way, I feel awful for Torey Lovullo. The poor guy broke down talking to the local media for radio, TV, and print. Very much concerned, I think, that he had not heard from Ketel and whatnot. Then, though, folks, Tuesday happens. And the D-backs maybe are trying to do damage control and shift the narrative, though, from restricted list to MRI for a knee injury suffered while they were in Atlanta over the weekend. And I actually, folks, watched Intentional Talk with Sierra Santos, who is a known D-backs fan, and Ryan Dempster. Sierra was like both angry in a way and also very emotional about Ketel being away from the team. Now, we, of course, know, folks, that Ketel has had some difficult moments the past year or two. I think back to last season when he was visibly shaken while they were playing the White Sox in Chicago during a mound visit and pitching change where he was seen crying during the break in the action, and it came out that there was a degenerate gambler in the stands who had openly mocked him about his mother's passing in a car crash back home in the DR. Then first series out of the gate for the All-Star game last year. Cattell went away to the DR because he had his home had been burglarized down in the Dominican Republic. And now you've got this story, folks. A very weird ordeal. Personal reasons was what they were told from the D-backs until Tuesday. And now, folks, in wake of this, there's now been 2 losses by Arizona at a very critical juncture in the season for them now. In 2 games now where Marte has not played. I, for one, think that some blame can be given to the Diamondbacks for how they've handled this. I don't discount the restricted list placement, but I think of something like more severe than just, than a knee injury. I don't approve of now trying to rewrite the narrative surrounding the knee problem now on Tuesday, one day after this media firestorm begins late on Monday night. Believe me, if there is something happening in his personal life, then he needs time to be in a to do whatever it is. But I also, again, just don't appreciate, though, how the Diamondbacks went about changing the story or try to change the narrative. But, I mean, that is 3 major things, though, in the last year and a half, if not year plus. Gets mocked by fans for his mom's passing. His home gets burglarized back home in the DR. Now this, whatever it might be. But I also know, folks, though, that Arizona Sports Radio has not let him off the hook. Nick Morganson shared a story with me before the show came on the air. KMVP talk show host, 98.7 Arizona Sports, John Gambardaro doubled down on his criticism of Marte and calling him a very much a selfish individual player. Folks, do, though. So, by the way, folks, thankfully, and thanks to Awful Announcing and also to sources over at PHNX Sports, I want to share with you real quick the 21-second clip from Torey Lovullo when he was asked by the Diamondbacks media about what he could share about Ketel Marte involving the restricted list placement. Let's go and have a listen to Torey Lovullo's remarks. Sorry about that. Here we go.
So I want to keep that private, though.
You seem a little emotional. Are you worried?
No, not really. I love him and I care for him. I'll be okay.
What would the struggle for today?
He is fine. Ketel is fine. He is fine. I want you guys to know that I just care for him on that level. So does everybody in that room.
So that, again, folks, was Torey Lovullo after the Diamondbacks game on Monday, the 11-1 loss to the Red Sox. That, of course, happened with the wake of the news of Ketel Marte's restricted list placement on Monday before the game. The D-backs also were very late releasing their starting lineup because they were wondering if Ketel was going to show up. You know, I generally have enjoyed Torey Lovullo's time in Arizona from afar as a Padre fan, again, divisional rival. But I think, folks, it goes back, though, to, I think, a point that Nick and I have long talked about, especially in team sports. You see your coaches, the training staff, and your teammates more than you see your family during the course of a season like baseball is. And you generally, feel rattled and shaken when stuff like this happens, whatever it might be. But I think this is a very delicate situation that we probably have to be very cautious with right now at this rate. I think we should not pass judgment right now on what Cattell might be going through. Is it a mental health breakdown? Is it, is it something involving home life? Whatever it is, I think we have to reserve judgment on the story until more comes clear. But I do think, though, that we all can, in some way, agree, though, this does seem to be a little bit suspicious because of how the D-backs kind of in a way backpedaled and backtracked on Tuesday. It was him going back to Phoenix to have an MRI on his knee. That part, I think we all can agree something's not adding up here with the franchise. I really think so. And we'll keep an eye on that story, though, as the week does prolong at this time. We hope folks stay in vital signs and stay as well in baseball as well with the other news. The San Diego Padres were officially sold and officially voted via a unanimous vote on Monday to the new ownership group led by Jose E. Feliciano and his wife Kwanda Jones, with minority partners right now still being right now confirmed at this time. That also includes that the Padres will maintain CEO Eric Grupner and team GM AJ Preller remain in place, as does Craig Stammen. On the field, recently, the Padres have now won 18 of the last 25 games and now are 68-58 in a wild cards position, and also made the playoffs 4 times in the last 6 seasons, and also, of course, have been the number 2 marketplace for attendance underneath the course of where the Dodgers have been with what it is. So, folks, let me kind of, in a way, break this down for you. So, of course, this all happened, folks, when Peter Seidler passed away back in 2023 in November. There was massive concern across the city that a new ownership group would immediately strip mine the roster, gut the payroll, and put the Padres back to their mid-2000s era of being a major small market team. Most importantly, folks, again, in their official statement made on Monday, both Jose E. Feliciano and his wife, Kwanda Jones, explicitly cited building on Peter's legacy to bring the World Series title here to San Diego for the first time in franchise history. Now, again, folks, here's also this thing. Here's where I'll cut through the corporate spin. For the last 3 years, though, Commissioner Rob Manfred and the ownership, Cabell, have paraded around media outlets claiming that the modern-day baseball economy is broken and that team revenues are unviable and that small to mid-market teams are bleeding money. Then a franchise in a mid-market footprint with no TV contract safety net sells off for $3.9 billion. Let that sink in. The Padres, who are currently underneath the Padres.tv, brought to you by UC San Diego Health, no local TV deal, and was bought my senior year of high school in 2012 for $800 million. They quintupled in value over 14 years and are more expensive than Nick DiMartino's New York Mets, which completely obliterates the owner's narrative that running a baseball team is a low-margin, high-risk financial burden. Franchises are not struggling businesses. They are impenetrable private equity wealth vaults that appreciate faster than any asset class on planet Earth. More importantly, folks, here's another question here about this. How do we now look at both of these stories that we're talking about here involving Ketel Marte and the Padres as we head towards December 1st? When a player like Ketel Marte walks away from a team over internal friction and contract frustration, the league is again preparing to weaponize small market poverty to demand a hard salary cap in the next negotiations. But how does Rob Manfred look, though, at the PA in the eye in labor talks and say, we need a hard salary cap to protect our owners, when those same owners just signed off via unanimous vote to sell the Padres for $3.9 billion? Again, folks, I say it all the time. I have lived through a lot of shitty baseball in San Diego. I know. I have seen all but one playoff berth in my 32 years living. 96, 98, 05, 06, the near misses in 07 and 2010 and 2020 when they made it back to the postseason. I've seen it all. 32 years, I've seen it all. I never would have thought that a team in a small market town known for craft beer, beaches, the zoo, SeaWorld, taco shops, and no NFL team would sell for nearly $4 billion. They quintupled the franchise value over the last 14 seasons. That is like incredible. And I do think that they will live up to those promises of keeping the Seidler family's wishes about keep going for it alive and well. Now, they might be a bit smarter about their money and not as overzealous with spending money on players. But like I've said, though, folks, you've got a team in the Padres with these big contracts, playing in a ballpark, folks, that is virtually sold out every home game. There might be some dips here and there, though, because school's back in session out here in San Diego. It's been out here. It's been back in session for 8 days now since last Monday. But I have really seen how this community has rallied around this baseball team. And I hear this, folks, all the time from colleagues of mine who are on local radio or TV here, that I know it's weird probably for a lot of our viewers on ETB and those listening on the podcast app. You know, how can a baseball team be so well loved in a marketplace that doesn't have the NFL, for example, or no other big sports teams in town? I know that we have 2 soccer teams, and they've been crushing it too with both the Wave and SDFC. And I know that we've long been called, small market and fair weather fans, and we only go when the team's winning and blah, 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 blah. I've lived with that stigma for 32 years. But it really does show, though, when you have an ownership that cares and that treats the team like it's a part of the community, this is how you get rewarded. You get players like Machado and Tatis and Bogarts and Musgrove and Merrill, to play for this organization. That's why you've got a ballpark that is virtually top 2 in attendance every single year. And why a random Monday game with the Pirates, for example, is sold out. Because it's about how the team is a part of the fabric of the community. Believe me, folks, I will go further in depth next January when I revisit the 10 years of the Chargers being gone. And I remember when that happened, that people went all in on the Padres, all in on the Gulls, and all in on teams that cared about this community and cared about this city. And that is why I birthed the hashtag San Diego versus everybody. And that's now been used by Jake Cronenworth and been used by SDFC when they've beaten LAFC or beaten the Galaxy. And I remember, folks, I had written on my Substack over at Mr. Small Market. I remember when I heard that the Seidlers were going to sell the Padres after Peter had passed and after 2 years of playoff berths and, the loss in 24, the loss in 25, that I was really wondering, and much like I said about the Buss family, we had infighting here. We had Peter's widow, Sheil, sell John Seidler and sell the other brothers of Peter for, fiduciary duty issues and not fulfilling what the trust said about making her the control person and so on and so forth. I just want to read Sheil Seidler's farewell post real quick, if I can. Just have to pull it up real quick. So this was written by Sheil Seidler, the widow of Peter Seidler. Sheil writes on Instagram, "With a heavy heart, I'm sharing this news, but also with so much gratitude for the journey Peter and I share with the Padres. I believe the sale to Jose E. Feliciano and Kwanzaa Jones reflects what Peter would have wanted for the team and for San Diego. He cared deeply about building a legacy that brought people together, championed diversity, and opened doors for others. I'm grateful that Jose and Kwanzaa share that vision and are investing in the future of the Padres here in San Diego. This chapter closes one door and opens another for the team that we love. To the Friar faithful, thank you for your support, your kindness, and honoring Peter's legacy. I will always carry his light forward." End of her statement. This is what I think Peter would have wanted. Forget the price tag, folks. Just somebody out there who cares enough about this marketplace, about this baseball team, and to bring this city that I know is only known for fish tacos and the beach and SeaWorld and Mizzou and craft beer. But just to give this city that's been looking since 1963 for their first Big Four championship, Big Five championship in history. That this new chapter begins. Would I have taken a Joe Lacob ownership or a Dan Freakin one? Absolutely. But I think with how ambitious that Jose and Kwanzaa were during the bidding process, what I heard, they kept pushing and pushing and pushing Friedkin and Lacob, who I think a lot of people, including myself, thought had the inside track to buy the Padres. They just kept pressing the issue. I mean, if you're that way with bidding for the team, I can only imagine how that might be come free agency, for example. And I also love how energetic Kwanzaa is. I love following her on Instagram. She was at the World Cup final, I think, and whatnot. And, I think their personal story, not to go too far in the weeds. I mean, they're college sweethearts. They went to Princeton. They all got their degrees there in the mid-'90s. And now you get to run a baseball team and invest your time and effort into a community that, has, given that right back to the Padres. And again, I know it's I'll say it again, but I know it might be a bit weird about how, with where the game of baseball has gone over the last several years, Dodgers this, Dodgers that, blah, 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 blah. And again, I know that probably Nick Morgeson and probably a lot of our baseball friends out there on this network, David and Ben and Ryan and Nate are probably like, man, look at what's going on in Callan's backyard. I don't watch a lot of West Coast baseball, from their perspective, but man, it's a Monday night and they have a sellout crowd. And this is a market without the NFL. I think it goes back to ownership. It's one of those, like, to quote Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And before I wrap up and we move on here, I constantly think back to the 98 Padres. I know I was like 3 or 4 years old, folks, but I've got a very much, photographic memory, and having done research and watched documentaries about that team. I remember being at Game 3 of that year's NLCS when we beat Atlanta. And I remember how painful it was to be at Game 3 of the '06 NLDS when we lost to the Cardinals 2-0. And then being outside the ballpark, watching them beat the Cardinals in 20 for the first playoff win in 14, 15, 16, 18, 20 years. I remember being at Knott's Berry Farm with my girlfriend at the time, watching the Padres beat the 111-win Dodgers in the 2022 NLDS to go to the NLCS. I remember it was raining that day, and I told her, I said, Victoria, I need to go and watch the ending of this baseball game. And when they won the game, I ran around the park, hooting and hollering and flipping off Dodger fans and being a maniac. I didn't care. We just beat the Dodgers to go to the NLCS. And then I remember going to the 2024 wild card round against the Braves. First playoff game I had gone to in 18 years. And I only remember it because one of my friends had to go to the ER after the game was over because he popped an ulcer. And when Fernando Tatis Jr. hit that leadoff homer, I felt the ballpark shaking. And I watched Michael King have the second most strikeouts in a playoff game in franchise history, only chasing Kevin Brown in 90 when he had 16 versus Houston. And how loud it was in the bottom half of the eighth inning, singing All the Small Things by Blink-182, which is our we're winning tradition in the bottom half of the eighth inning at Petco. I mean, that is infectious. And I know I long have said that, new owners usually come in and they wreck, they wreck the house. They come in, they don't wipe their feet off on the welcome mat. They put their feet up on the dining room table and they break it. But I think that this is the right group to lead this team into their next chapter. And we will hopefully have more for you next Monday. Next Monday is the official introductory press conference for Mr. Feliciano and Mrs. Jones at Petco next Monday. So we'll hope to bring you that report when we have our next program here for the Cranium next Monday, because I'll be away again for a work event on Tuesday next week. But I also wonder, though, folks, with the sale happening during the lead up, to this impending baseball lockout, what though in your mind, if you're a baseball fan, what does a $3.9 billion sale say about where the game is at, but also which side gets the leverage? The owners who are saying, hey, baseball teams sold for nearly $4 billion before a lockout? Or is that a player advantage about, hey, teams are worth this much now, cave into our demands? Matter of fact, before we move on here, because I think we have a late incident in the membrane we have to bring up here. I believe that the sale was also referenced by the MLBPA on Monday morning. Trying to pull it up again, folks, real quick. Give me one sec. And I was not really surprised about the PA having their response about the sale. So all the statement reads, investing in players pays off. The actual post says, A quote from Peter Seidler. There's a risk to doing nothing, open and close quote. The Players Association rattled off the following things about the Padres sale. $800 million, the 2012 purchase price via Forbes. $3.9 billion, 2026 selling price via the Wall Street Journal. Average rank of payroll. Between 2011 and 2019, the Padres had the 24th payroll in baseball. Between the last 5 years, not including 2026, the Padres are now 7th in payroll in baseball. Average Petco Park attendance. Between 2011 and 2019, the Padres were 18th in baseball in home attendance at 2.2 million. Just last season alone, 3.4 million, second in all of Major League Baseball. Playoff appearances. 4 of last 6 seasons. 2020, 22, 24, 25. Before that, 84, 96, 98, 05, 06. So who do you believe the Padres ownership sale benefits more? Baseball owners or the MLBPA? Let us know, and we'll get to your comments over the course of the week. All right, folks, with that in mind, we are going to bring the episode home into... Oh, wait a second. Gee whiz, what else is new? He's probably got a burner account watching the show, like he usually does. You know, Isaiah Lee Young, we made a deal 4 weeks ago to stop the BS that I even mentioned on this program about you and me both being idiots when it comes to how we treat each other. Get back to keeping up your end of the deal that we made a few weeks ago. And stop going behind my back and doing stupid shit. Ubaldo Jimenez is not going to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame for one good year in Colorado because, oh, he pitched so good at Coors Field. He wasn't there his whole career, you moron. And yet again, stop insulting my hockey intelligence. I think I'm the one with credentials here, not you. So all you have to do is keep up your end of a very simple deal. And you would stop being insane in the membrane. So don't go bitch and moan to your clones out there about about me going after you, because you do it all the time to me. So figure it out. You are insane in the membrane. Figure it out. It's not that hard. Alrighty, folks, we'll now close out the show for the evening and get to our Cranium command, all of our comments across YouTube and Twitter. Again, folks, as a reminder, again, give us some patience, though, again, as we did hit 3,000 over the course of the watch hour goal that we hit. Again, we have to wait roughly about 2 to 3 weeks to get all that finalized, though, and then we can start taking your super chats and your super thanks and super stickers. Nick Morgeson starts off the command post by saying, believe it or not, though, the TikTok account content that Callan was doing eventually led to the show becoming a thing. Yeah, that is true, actually. I think, Nick, it was actually more for a segment, I think, on the lounge, I think. And it wound up morphing into the solo-hosted show. Now, to add a bit more to this, by the way, James would know this better than most people. When James and I first got linked up as colleagues and friends and whatnot about 15 years ago, if not longer, the Sports Lounge, or the ETB Lounge, actually was a show of mine when I first met James about 15, 16, 18 years ago. And it eventually morphed into becoming the ETB Lounge when I first came here back in April of last year. That was my solo-hosted program forever. The Cranium thing, though, came from Nick about TikTok, about my TikTok commentary, and then morphed to being a potential segment for the ETB Lounge, and now morphed into this 1 hour plus Tuesday show that I host here. So, like, partially it's my doing, mainly more Nick's doing and stuff of that caliber. I know that Nick says, dude, I would love if we could redo, that, your TikTok commentary. I just have not had any time to do any of it. Away from maybe some of the clips and then whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's very much interesting about how ideas come to you. I make the joke all the time that Press Row came to me one day in the shower, and it morphed into becoming a 3-hour talk show here on ETB. So I mean, yeah, I mean the TikTok commentary, the account, whatever, led to the Cranium becoming a show. So that was part of the stepping stone. I concur. Shout out to my good man Casey King, who also says, Callan, you are the bomb. Case, I really, really appreciate that, man. I really try not to, do a lot of this. I always live by the creed about, no one cares, work harder. And I always think back, Casey, to when this time of the year rolls around for my season to start, like really starting it going, that I used to go on hiatus and not do shows because I would want to rest my voice, relax, make sure I'm fully prepared for games when I have to actually go and make money and actually go and work for a living and not just sit in here and do these shows right now. That usually I would not be here. Like if I had my way before I got to ETB, I wouldn't be here right now. I would be, getting ready for high school football on Friday, as I am working on doing. And now I have to work around this content and then work around my actual job now, and things of that nature. So, I mean, Casey, I appreciate you, my man. I always love hanging out with you whenever you come to town for Gulls and Rain games or indoor football. And more importantly, I love being able to give back my time to those that are a part of this journey. As I always say, me and Casey, James and I have gone to Padre games together or indoor football games together, and they have come watch. They've come to games I've worked to, hear me actually do my actual job, and then we'll go out to have beer after the game's over, and and that's what I think is so. I think Casey cool about what I do for a living. And another story for you folks. In the 11 years I've been, 10 years going on 11 with my AHLPA job, I always make the joke, by the way, that I can't go to any hockey event in town or even in Anaheim without people like Casey recognizing me from my work with the Gulls. And at first it was a little scary, believe it or not. Like I'd have like random people come up to me and say, "Hey, I love your voice. I love your power play call. I love the goal call. I love the 1 minute remaining in the first period that you always say." And at first it was like startling. Like, I don't really know you. This is cool. Like whatever. But it's like, you know what? I think back to my thoughts about COVID. When people like Casey King are watching games from home, my friends and family who couldn't travel to games or go to games to watch the game, and above all, hear their uncle's voice, like my niece and nephew, to watch the Gulls play at Sports Arena, for example. I think about that so often nowadays about what us as sports fans, what we all lost during the pandemic. I did a game at Honda Center. Nobody in the stands. I did a whole 2 years of PA for hockey, not in the penalty box. Being able to see the crowd and hear the crowd go to the bathroom on the concourse and people want to stop and say, "Hi," I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm on a time crunch." That the job that I do and that a lot of people do is no longer taken for granted because it's such a big part of your experience at games. And I always try to include people that are a part of this 18, 19-year odyssey that I've been a part of or been doing since I was in high school. You know, people like Casey, people like James, even people like Isaiah. You know, I remember when I first, and I know I'm doing a lot of story time, folks. But I remember, though, when I first got linked up with the roller hockey league I do PA for here in San Diego, which we, just had our season end on Saturday. And I remember, though, that, believe it or not, Isaiah Leung said something smart for a change. And he told me after that first season when we were, still kind of in a way doing work together, he says, Cal, look, I know I give you so much flack and shit for your career and what you do and trolling you about the Padres and, how you don't like the NFL and whatever. And he says, I know I'm getting into your sport and I know that I've embarrassed myself and I need to, listen to you and whatnot about this game and stop mocking your career and what you've built and how hockey built your career. And he said, with all that said, that, it's hard not to respect what you've done for the game. And that, I've seen the impact from my own perspective about how the hockey community is around you, for example. And in a way, like he's like in a roundabout way, it was basically, I don't know how to phrase it, but that your impact on this sport and on this community where you live is I've never seen it before. And furthermore, the roller hockey league folks I work in, they named their championship trophy after me. And I never once would have thought that my family name would be bearing a trophy for anything. I mean, who the hell am I except for, a near 20-year sports announcer and a fringe former high school baseball player who just happened to chase a dream from age 4 till now. But it's people like Casey King, though, who help you stay grounded. I mean, yeah, we all have egos, like I said earlier. Like we all chase something. We're all motivated by something. But I never chased having a championship trophy for a hockey league named after me, for example. Or being named the department's MVP of last AHL season. Or coming here back in April of last year and then, Nick Morgeson puts faith and trust in me to lead this network forward as the creative director for ideas and whatnot. I didn't come here to do that. I came here to, take a gamble on myself, try something new. And that was about it. And eventually it led to, being a part of the admin team for this platform and seeing this network get to 3,000 hours when I thought there were times I was going to probably quit doing this stuff again. Because I didn't think I'd meet the demands of the schedule of you have to be here on these days and, these watch parties and fulfill quota. Yeah, that's how disconnected I felt when I first came here. I mean, I almost left after a month because I was already getting burnt out and whatnot. And, some things were happening behind the scenes that, have all been repaired. Damage control was done and whatnot. But I didn't think I was going to last here, to be very frank. And in a way, it's one of those trust the processes and you move on and you just kind of, do what you do best. And I hope that I've done that for the last year plus for the admin team and for everyone I've worked with here. And like I said earlier, that, I'm not one that really holds grudges. I might be a May-born tourist and I might be stubborn about that sort of thing. But again, like, to Casey's point, Casey and everybody I work with at the 2 other platforms I was a part of, they all are instrumental in why I have been so successful. And I try not to leave people out of that. It is that thing of like, don't forget where you came from. I don't. I came from a WNBA podcast network that I started with my two bare hands in 2013 when I was in college, to one that I worked with Isaiah and his friends for a couple of years during COVID, to one that we went to, there for a few years, and we did some wacky things with, a show about nothing, and we did game show nights, and Press Row went there for a bit, and one that was going to lean into, sports and pop culture talk. And now I'm here with people that are basically, same sort of ordeal that I'm in with radio and TV and media and whatnot. And I try not to dwell on the past. Some things didn't line up, with those other two platforms, but that doesn't mean I don't love and respect everybody that I worked with. You might have one bad apple with any company, like, certain, just certain companies out there that we've all been a part of. I left one college because there was a toxic boss there. Shit happens. And I'm just very grateful for the chance here on ETB. Even if at times I wanted to quit and give up and not get back into podcasting, just focus on hockey and college athletics and things of that nature and Little League baseball. And it wound up being the other way. All right, enough of me gloating and about me boring you and putting you to sleep. Christy writes about Bill Rasmussen and also Ted Turner. True visionaries. Cannot agree more. Taking that gamble, Christy, about 24/7 cable news, 24 hours a day sports content. Who would have thunk that? Christy also clarifies Gulf War was 90 to 91. Casey also agrees. Larry King, first big hire at CNN. And Casey also says that, yes, Callan, those were the days of ESPN. Could not agree more. Nick Morganson also writes that, yes, Bill Rasmussen's vision is the reason that many stars of today have become stars. All sports networks are based off the vision of ESPN, whether people admit it or not. And that's why I said that, Nick, that, yes, though ESPN is not what it should be currently here in 2026, stardom, launching careers, as I said way back at the top of the show, is all a debt being owed to Bill Rasmussen. Casey says, man, I miss the days of roller derby being on ESPN. I think the LA T-Birds came to San Diego to play the Bombers, I think, a lot during those days. And he also says, I miss Up Close with Roy Firestone on ESPN as well. Nick also says that, yes, Callan, ESPN did change when Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee took over the airwaves. Chris Berman, Bob Lee, John Saunders, Linda Cohn, and more are the true legends. ESPN embarrasses themselves now all the way across the board. Yeah. Nick, we can also throw Tony Reale, Michael Rolbon, and Tony Kornheiser in that mix too. Casey also says, yeah, I agree I agree, Cal. Without Bill Rasmussen's vision for ESPN and Ted Turner for CNN, sports and news would be definitely gone differently. These guys were legends. Can't agree more. They were awesome. Nick also says that Disney/ESPN has become too corporate and controlled by Instagram and TikTok views. Ugh. I miss the real hard-hitting reporting of the true E60 30 for 30 and true journalism like the sports reporters. Sports Center is not SC anymore. I agree, Nick. I mean, I don't know what else we can really say about that, to be very frank, but man, it really is tough to see how this company's just gone into the tank. It's sad. Christie sounds off about the Clippers. This whole situation smells fishy. Yeah, Christie, I think so. It's fishy. It's wrong. It's sleazy. It's the easy way out. And it's damn collusion. Because you got to protect the big pockets and the big wallet of Steve Ballmer. Casey also asks, hey, Cal, with Mark Walters selling the Lakers, do you at all think do you think down the road he sells the Dodgers? I think it will be a possibility as he is being investigated. Woof. Casey, I could give you the Padre fan answer or the 19-year media member answer. I'll give you the option B. I would think eventually, Case, everything has to go. Lakers are gone. Sparks would be gone. My God, the PWHL would be gone. Inevitably, I think, Casey, so would the Dodgers. To pay off whatever has been going on here. And again, it's Casey, I'm saying this, though, from a media perspective and a talk show perspective. If Walter sells, Jeff Bezos better be first in line to buy the Dodgers. I say that to keep this sort of, big, bad 90s era Yankee spending going. Or if the Buss family is so hell-bent on getting back in the ownership of sports, go on the Dodgers. And see if you wreck that team like you wrecked the Lakers. But yeah, Casey, this story, we'll have more about this on PR with myself and Nick Morgeson on Wednesday afternoon, midday morning. We'll see. I do think, though, that is possible, but we'll see. Nick Ferber says, yes, I said this on ETB Sports on Tuesday that Ballmer is probably guilty, but Silver will never take him down due to his billions or the billions that he brings into the league. I mean, sadly, Nick, was I right or was I right on the bonus hour of PR? Nick further says that Aspiration and Daktronics both no-show endorsement deals, and Silver says no evidence for this. Make it make sense to me. I said that too, Nick, as well. Then we found out, though, in the afternoon about Biongo Wireless, the third company being named in the ESPN story. I mean, my goodness, what more do you need? Nick says voiding Kawhi's contract makes him a free agent, so that is not a punishment. That's why I said you void the contract and you say you can't play until the verdict is done or you are suspended for a full year. Again, Nick, the only problem, though, I think the NBA would have, though, here is that Joe Smith, last circumvention ordeal, Joe Smith was never affected by the punishment. It all went to the Wolves. No, Nick, you know what you do? You do what I said on PR last Wednesday. Dennis Robertson must be banned for life, like Sterling, from any business dealings in the NBA going forward. That, I think, stops it right there. I mean, maybe you can do something to Kawhi, but I think that, Sally, Nick, what's going to happen? Breaking news, NBA PA has filed a grievance against Kawhi Leonard's suspension for aspiration. Either way, I think Kawhi's going to be on the floor somewhere playing in 10% of the games because he's going to load manage his way to a title. I know it's not the right punishment, Nick, but I don't know what else you can do because, again, Joe Smith was not punished by himself. The player was not suspended or penalized. So who knows? Casey says that Adam Silver is a joke, just like Rob the Schmuck Manfred is of baseball. I agree. Nick also says that all three companies have deals with the Clippers, conflict of interest, that the money is nowhere to be found. I think, Nick, more importantly, that all three companies were also sponsors of the Dome, as you and Zan said very well on ETB Sports on Tuesday. So you had Aspiration, Boingo Wireless, and now in Daktronics. You had a corporate sponsorship deal in place with Aspiration. Then you have the scoreboard built by Daktronics, and then this Biongo wireless company that is the official wireless partner for the entire arena. Again, Nick, one word. Collusion. Casey further says that all 4 commissioners have faults, but Silver and Manfred are the worst of the bunch. Casey, I will defer and say it is Silver and Kathy Engelbert. Christy also says, yes, Cal, I believe that is collusion. It sure feels that way. Casey says, hey, man, got to give credit to the Padres. They are playing great. They're playing good baseball. I think they will get in one of the 2 final wild card spots. I mean, I would hope so. I mean, they had quite a game on Tuesday. You had a leadoff homer from Fernando Tatis Jr., a 2-run homer from 2-homer game for Tatis Jr. He robs a grand slam of Lindor. I mean, they're playing great finally. And Robbie Ray had his best outing of the entire year for the Padres already on Tuesday as well. Casey also says, speaking of wild cards, the American League wild card for the last spot is an absolute joke, as it's a battle between 7 teams. We might get a team in the postseason with a record below 500. Yeah, well. No, but we can't have middling teams in the playoffs and whatnot because my Phillies and Rangers didn't get Mason Miller. Okay, we might have one team, Isaiah, make the playoffs with a losing record. More teams means more revenue for the league to pay these players their money. Quit bitching about that. Casey says the AOS is also a slog. Can we say that the AOS is much like the NFC South in the No Fun League for American football? Gotta be. Casey also says, yes, Cal also wanted to say RIP to Tommy John, as he was a great player and needs to be in the Hall of Fame one day as he got the wins to get in. He will be missed. Yeah, I said that last week, Casey, on last week on the show. Again, you know, what if that surgery does not pan out for him? I mean, my goodness, that'd be insane. Nick further says that, yes, Dr. Jeanie Buss has to be rolling in his grave a million times over as the Lakers that he turned into a legendary franchise are now being pile driven into the ground. Jeanie suing her brothers is an absolute joke. And I couldn't agree more. Sadly. Casey also says, yes, Dr. Buss was the bomb, and the Lakers have gone downhill after he passed on. That went to my point earlier in the show, folks. If you take 2020 out of the Lakers' timeline, what had the last 13 years been like minus that year in 2020? Putrid. Casey says, yes, they owned the good old LA Lasers. I do miss them. Went to a couple of games at the Forum, and those games were fun. Indoor soccer is a whole different animal. I would know it. 11 years, 3 championships. Don't at me, Isaiah. Christy further says that the situation involving the Lakers and the Buss family is like a soap opera. Christy, it's partially why we named the episode at Tinseltown Triage on your podcast app and here on YouTube. Casey Ferber says that the Buss family kids are a joke. Gee, Casey, kids acting up like this reminds me of kids acting up at the holiday dinner table. Go figure. Christy says, I said this earlier, but I think that Jeanie Buss sounds like a toxic person to me. Well, again, Christy, when you have power and money and ego to stoke, that can make it toxic. I agree. Casey also says real quick that the Showtime Laker era was his favorite of all time. When the NBA had class, the Shaq and Kobe era was great too, but after that, the NBA took a dive. Yeah, big time. Absolutely. And also, as Casey wanted to mention too, that Dr. Buss formed Prime Ticket. The first RSN launched 41 years ago, and now the RSNs are all but gone. Nick Morgeson sounds off on the No Fun League, saying, like I always say, Cal, the NFL is a greedy pig. They will always do anything to make an extra buck, even if it means crossing borders to have a team or make watching the games difficult to watch. Yes, I concur. Casey says, yep, the NFL does not need more teams, especially overseas. 32 teams is good enough. Yeah, that is. You know, I hate to say it, folks, but I don't want anybody to think that this town here is going to get an NFL team. Snapdragon cannot hold 35,000 for an NFL team is not what you need. Oh, but what about the Pangea project down in Chula Vista that's going to have a 50,000-seat stadium? No. Not going to happen. Oh, come on. You're just bitter because the NFL left your city. No. Even if that's the case, folks, it's not going to be the same for San Diego natives like yours truly. You know, if the San Diego Thunder or San Diego Bolts come to town, it's not the San Diego Chargers. I'm sorry, the football team I did watch from 94 till 2017 is now in LA. And basically trying to say that we never played in San Diego. But they'll mooch off the 94 Super Bowl team and wear the all-navy blue, change the scoreboard to look like Jack Murphy Stadium, and then shoot off that damn cannon and act like, oh, this is our tribute to San Diego. Yeah, the song is called San Diego Superchargers. Sorry, San Diego, California is a baseball, hockey, and soccer town now. If you don't like it, tough. Nick further says that, yes, people grossly mistake the NFL viewership for international expansion. I'm willing to bet soccer beats the NFL internationally when it comes to ratings and audience numbers. Please go look at the FIFA numbers from this past World Cup. I'm glad somebody wants to defend yours truly here about soccer and the NFL. I mean, I've been the man on a deserted island this whole summer about soccer and the NFL on this platform. That somebody out there actually can throw me a bone for once, unlike Lee Young and some host on this platform about certain things. Nick says, reason why, though, Cal, is simple. NFL international games are like going to Vegas. It's a tourist experience where you go once for the culture, then you leave and you move on with your life. Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, again, Nick, I will slightly, again, twist the words a little bit from you about hockey in Vegas. Again, that is a full-fledged Vegas-born franchise. Again, I don't want to, twist the words, though, but, the Raiders and the Aces and the A's are more, I think, not immune to the visiting fans coming to their games, like the Raiders, like the Aces for a little bit, and even like the Athletics will in a couple of years. I mean, like I said, Nick, I went to the expansion draft in 2017. That was full-fledged Vegas Golden Knight fans there. There may have been a spattering of us that were wearing, I wore my Gulls jersey to the event. My friend wore a Gulls jersey. There may have been some spattering of, Ducks fans, Kings fans, but, I mean, I would say, Nick, that probably 85, 90%, 95% was all Golden Knight fans and not anybody else. I mean, I went for a preseason game, Nick, versus the Coyotes. Sellout crowd, all wearing Golden Knight gear. I went to a game with my lady the week of Christmas in 2022 or 23, one of the two. And week of Christmas, packed with people wearing Golden Knight gear. So that one I will, again, kind of in a way defer that argument about Vegas in a way about sports, about with how that team has been built for the last decade. But for NFL overseas, I agree. It's a one-time ordeal. The Super Bowl coming to San Diego when I was a kid in 97 and 03. I did all the stuff like at the convention center, and I moved on. Like, okay, this is cool, whatever. I don't care who's playing in the game. That was literally me. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, the NFL experience was one thing. I'm going to move on and worry about the Padres and the Gulls now. I don't care about the Super Bowl and the Chargers. Callan McClurg, circa 97 and circa 03. I mean, okay, I saw 2 Super Bowls in San Diego. Okay, that was cool. It didn't change my life. Didn't make me think less of this stupid-ass sport that is the NFL. Baseball All-Star game, though, absolutely. I was at the Home Run Derby. It's amazing. Super Bowl? Yeah, I'll go Yak instead. Nick further says, I'm calling the bluff, though, for Goodell when he says there will be an international franchise. I won't believe it until it actually goes through. Is it really worth the extra $1 billion? Sure it is. Profits over people. Come on, Morganson, we're going to resurrect the Scottish Claymores of the NFL Europe League. We're going to bring back the Frankfurt Galaxy and the Barcelona Dragons. Now we're going to go raid the CFL instead. And we're going to go and add the Toronto Argonauts and the Ottawa Red Blacks and the BC Lions and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The only thing the NFL got right was sending the Rams and Niners to Melbourne. That's all they got right. Christy says real quick about Ketel Marte. I'm afraid for him, and maybe his mental health may be a factor in his situation. Just saying. Who knows? We will see. Casey, I agree that Goodell's downside is he's too worked up about the NFL going overseas. I agree. Absolutely agree 100%. Christy also says, Cal, I am happy that the Padres are going to have owners who care about not only the team but also the community as well. Yeah, Christy, Nick, should I spill the beans or spill the hot tea about what I told you on Tuesday? Folks, am working on trying to go and cover this ownership change press conference next Monday at Petco Park involving Mr. Feliciano and Mrs. Jones. And Christy, obviously, like I said, though, I remember, like I said, I wrote this back on Substack, though, months ago when the news came out about the Sidlers wanting to explore the sale. And I was actually at the Padre game versus the White Sox back on May 2nd when the news came across that the sale had gone through, or that the group led by Jose and Kwanzaa was accepted by the Sidler family. And like I say, Christy, a lot of times, though, in pro sports, that you get so worked up in a way as a fan that when you hear about an ownership change, you get very, very perplexed and you get very, very nervous about changes happening and what does that mean for the roster going forward. And that was kind of a thing that scared me, Christy, because I was, again, young. Not born yet to remember when the Padres had their 90s era fire sale, when they got rid of Gary Sheffield and Fred McGriff and Tony Fernandez and Joe Carter, and how this fan base, Christy, just ate the ownership group alive over the course of 3 straight seasons. No one went to games. People used to threaten and clown Trevor Hoffman's wife at the time when he first came in from the Marlins. And there was major blowback, Christy, about that group that bought the Padres and did all those fire sales. You know, we had Robbie Alomar, Joe Carter, Gary Sheffield, and Fred McGriff all shipped out of town over a 2 to 3 year span. And this fan base, Christy, was in a full-fledged mutiny towards the Tom Werner group that had ownership of the Padres. And the John Moores era, of course, was the 98 World Series run, though. But that, of course, was like a one-time shot in the dark, though, of like Kevin Brown and Steve Finley, Ken Caminetti, Wally Joyner, you know, Tony Gwynn still being Tony Gwynn, and then all those guys, but Tony, like, left. I remember being heartbroken when Steve Finley left the Padres to go to the Diamondbacks. Away from Tony and Trevor, Steve Finley is my all-time favorite Padre player of all time. And when he left, I was heartbroken. And I lived through all the years of them not spending, worrying about the future. The short-lived Anthony Rizzo experiment that they had before he got dealt to the Red Sox and wound up winning a World Series with the Cubs 10 years ago. So again, Christy, like I said, I've lived through a lot of shit baseball, despite like all the playoff runs. There's playoff runs, 50 feet of shit, and then there's the other shit I've watched in my time being a baseball fan in San Diego. And all it took, though, Christy, was Peter Seidler and his family and his group buying the club, though, back in 2012 and then spending the damn money on the roster. And now here they are, Christy, being sold for $3.9 billion, quintupling their value from when I was in high school in 2012. And they have been very much a first-class, community-first team. And every franchise in sports should be like this. And Nick Morgeson sounds off about the ownership sale at the end of the night. He says, Cal, it's simple, though. Sadly, baseball and pro sports is a private equity game with spending in the billions, and now it is which billionaire can outspend the other billionaire. I get that, Nick, and I know that we've had some sparring about, you know, how the hell can Manny Machado be a investor in SDFC alongside Saquon, who is rumored to be in the Padre minority ownership group, and there not be a conflict of interest? At the end of the day, Nick, again, to use win-loss behavior, Nick, sports overlook they overlook this shit all the time. You know, and I could be, you know, blue in the face and say, you know, about, you know, whatever it is. I just want a World Series in my lifetime. You know, and if it's worth a $4 billion price tag, and if it's private equity, so be it. You know, but I have to again reaffirm it that this is not coming out of Clear Lake Capital's piggy bank for private equity. This is literally through Jose and Kwanzaa building, you know, or buying this team out of their own pockets away from Clear Lake Capital. I mean, again, I would have taken any other ownership group not named Tom Gores, whoever bought the Padres. Lake Friedkin, Jose and Kwanzaa. You know, I'm trying to think of my nickname for Kwanzaa, though. Is it like First Lady of San Diego Baseball, like First Lady or like Madam President? I don't know yet. You know, and more importantly, you know, about breaking barriers, you know, Jose Feliciano becomes the second Latin American born or Latino American owner in baseball away from Marty Moreno. And I think, though, when you're in a community like San Diego is, when you are in this city, you're 20 minutes away from the border with Mexico. The Padre brand expands beyond the border into Tijuana, Baja California. I mean, you've got a whole community north of the border where we are, and you've got Tijuana, Baja California in the palm of your hand. So you've got the Latin connection. You've got Kwanzaa's connections about DEI and empowerment and women's empowerment and education and fostering education. And in a belief, though, that we are here to continue Peter Seiler's legacy. That, Nick, is all I want, is some damn continuity and some stability, that we are taking the torch that Peter Seiler lit in 2012 and to carry that torch into the future for this team, the fan base, and the city. Again, Nick, I don't mean to pop off, but hey, 27 rings. You've got a Super Bowl. Your hockey team has won Stanley Cups. The Pigeons have won an MLS Cup. We haven't won anything here since the Kennedy administration in 1963 in the American Football League. And I mean about MLB, the NBA, the NFL, NHL, you name it. I've got my 3 rings with the Sockers, yes. I watched the Gulls win Taylor Cups in the WCHL. Until you win something, Nick, in sports that people almost never care about, it doesn't mean jack shit. And, Nick, this is the closest I've seen the Padres to a World Series since '98, when we had to play your big, bad 114-win Yankee team that year. I just want all the hard work and dedication that people like me have put forth in this city, the 8th largest by population, better known for tacos and beer and the zoo and the Wild Animal Park and SeaWorld. Nick, to use your words against me, I want this tourist market to actually be on top of the sports world in something not named indoor soccer or minor league hockey for once. And that only can come, though, if people like Peter Seiler take the chance on a team like the Padres and actually put their damn money where their mouth is and actually put their money into the organization. And that is what they have built for 14 years and the last 6 seasons. I know, I get it, that your logic will be, well, you got to keep improving and you have to, get to the World Series eventually. Believe me, I want that 100%. I mean, if I'm being realistic, I want one before my folks pass. They're the ones who got me into watching the Padres in '98. And they have, they've gone, bent over backwards to watch anybody here win. Padres, the Chargers, when the Rockets and Clippers were here. I think, though, Nick, that more than anything else, though, that any baseball fan out there should really, I think, in a way, put away the thoughts about the ownership who bought the team and look at the price tag. $3.9 billion for a marketplace like San Diego, California. No NFL team. Soccer teams are here now. Longstanding minor league hockey history, Nick, that you really, I think, should appreciate that whole entire ordeal. I know, is it fishy that Machado is a player for the Padres, is a investor in SDFC, and Saquon might be involved with both teams? Sure. Then tell that to Jimmy Butler, who's also an investor, Nick, of San Diego Wave FC of the NWSL. James Harden, Kevin Durant, other athletes who have their money tied up right now in ownership of sports teams. If it's not good for one thing, then it's got to be for everybody else, and keep that same energy. And hopefully we'll get an answer about if I do, in fact, get confirmed to go and cover that event for ETB next Monday, involving the ownership sale, involving the official introductory press conference for both Jose E. Feliciano and Kwanzaa Jones to the local media here in town. They've said all the right things so far from the PR that I've gotten. It's PR slop. Who cares? You can say that all you want. Well, I think more importantly, I think the big thing that we are missing here is that, to my point, when Nick asked me about if you trade Mason Miller, what would that be saying about rebuilding? It's not rebuilding. It's about the fact, why would you, when you're a game out of the wild card race, punt on the season, and then the new owners come in and begin to blow up shop? As I said, you are a new owner of this beautiful house that's been built. You come in here and then wreck the place? That's not how you operate. I have lived with so much false hope about this city when it comes to the Padres, for example, that this finally feels like it's not false hope now. That now, in a way, I'm finally seeing a golden era of this franchise. They have never, folks, gone to the playoffs 3 years in a row. They were close, but it didn't happen. 05 through 07. More importantly, why would Jose and Kwanzaa blow up the roster, Nick, when what else is looming out here, Nick, away from your thoughts about private equity? Jose and Todd Bowley, who's a Dodgers owner, they own part of a soccer franchise in the EPL. They might be business partners over there, though, Mr. Morgeson. But you know what I also heard in the press? Away from the limelight, Feliciano hates Todd Bowley's guts. Oh, that's right, because he owns the Padres and Todd owns the Dodgers. One more little mention here, Mr. Morgeson. Look at our fellow owner, Joe Tsai. I say that because Joe owns the lacrosse team out here in San Diego. He called the Knicks winning a title embarrassing for you Net fans out there. I mean, is it pot calling kettle black? Is it this or is it that? I don't know. But at the end of the day, though, yeah, every sport, Nick, has private equity in it, though. But I think you have to be able to separate it, though, when it comes to the reporting that has been already confirmed here. But this is not going to be Clear Lake Capital owning the Padres. They have the backing of it, though, but it's not them directly owning the franchise. This is Jose and Kwanzaa across the board. And I'm not trying to get worked up about it here. It's just that's what the reports have been saying across the board. And yes, I know that there's that very gray area with Machado. But again, we don't know, though, yet still what the minority ownership stake will be for any of the prospective minority owners. Names have been floating out there in outer space. Drew Brees, Michael Purcell, the Jacobs family, Saquon, Joey and Jesse Buss. I do know, though, that there will be family of Peter Seiler who maintain the ownership that they've already had for the minority stakes, as will legendary Mexican Baseball League owner Alfredo Harpilu, maintaining his stake as well. You know what, Nick? It's simple. Pro sports now is a dog-eat-dog world. We're just living in it, sadly. Alrighty, folks, long show for the night, but we will now, folks, get out of here for the night and bring the episode home as we do, in fact, sign off for the evening. As, folks, I usually say, to close up the night here, we always cover a lot of ground on this show every week and perform open heart surgery on front office incompetence, cutting through the backroom corporate politics, and we call out bad faith narratives, whenever they try to take rot, like I said last week. But on one side of our table tonight, there's a multi-billion-dollar corporate game being played, and billionaire egos battling over LA basketball. The NBA spent 11 months chasing ghosts at Intuit Dome, only to pivot to a weak failure to supervise charge against Steve Ballmer to save face for the NBA front office. And then there's the Lakers on a $12.5 billion valuation, paralyzed by family infighting, court filings, attorney letters, and legal injunctions as the Buss family turns a once proud basketball institution to a private equity civil war. But on the other side, you look at what true untainted vision and foundational legacy actually means. When Bill Rasmussen maxes out his credit card for $9,000 back in '79 to acquire satellite space, nobody was playing corporate games, posturing for a labor lockout, or hiding behind legal injunctions. Bill saw a vision for what sports broadcasting could be, bet everything on himself, and built an entire ecosystem that changed how we consume sports and athletics forever. That is the lesson when you step out of the trauma bay tonight. Billionaires, league offices, and corporate trusts will always try to turn sports into a battleground of leverage, equity stakes, equity sales, and also narrative spin. But the true legends of this industry aren't built in courtrooms or backroom labor war posting. They are built on raw passion, authentic risk, and an unwavering commitment to the game itself. So all I ask is simple. Don't let the corporate suits and outrage merchants hollow out the sports that you love most. You better keep demanding the truth, keep dissecting the data, and never settle for the polished PR narrative. Thanks, as always, folks, for coming into the mind this evening and to the 270 people who joined us here tonight. We'll, again, folks, catch you again next Monday. Keep that in mind, again, folks. Next Monday, we're back here on the program at this rate due to, again, a work meeting I have to be at next Tuesday, the 25th. So, again, next Monday, we're back on the air here, August 24th at 9 p.m. Pacific time and midnight Eastern. Until then, folks, have a great night. We'll catch you back here again next week. But until then, as always, we'll catch you later.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.